Imagine waking up before sunrise in a cold stone shelter, somewhere in the mountains of Ice Age Iraq. The fire is low. Outside, the world is still black and every sound matters. The crack of a twig could mean a deer. The scrape of claws could mean a hyena. The sudden silence of birds could mean a leopard is moving nearby. Now imagine you cannot hear any of it. No warning growl, no shout from a hunting partner, no crackling branch behind you, no baby crying from the other side of the cave. In a world without hospitals, without hearing aids, without written language, without walls between you and predators, it sounds like deafness should have been a death sentence. But the fossils tell a stranger story. One of the most famous Neanderthals ever discovered is known as Shanidar I. He lived tens of thousands of years ago and was found in Shanidar Cave in the Zagros Mountains. His skeleton shows a life that had been unbelievably hard. He had suffered a crushing injury to the face, probably damaging vision in one eye. He had lost part of one arm. He had problems with movement, and later analysis found severe bony growths in his ear canals, which would likely have caused serious, possibly profound hearing loss. Yet he lived for years after many of these injuries. He did not vanish the moment his body became less useful. He survived. That single fact changes the whole question, because the real mystery is not simply how did a deaf ancient human survive? The real mystery is what kind of group allows someone like that to survive? Picture Shanidar I sitting near the fire. He may not hear the flames popping, he may not hear voices clearly, but he watches everything. The movement of shoulders, the direction of eyes, the tightening of a jaw, a hunter's hand lifting toward the slope, a child suddenly turning toward the cave entrance. In a small band, where everyone knows everyone else's habits, communication is not just sound. It is posture, it is rhythm, it is face, hands, distance, breath, and timing. We often imagine ancient humans as creatures of grunts and screams, as if language suddenly appeared one day, and before that everyone was helplessly pointing at rocks. But communication in human evolution was almost certainly never just about noise. Modern humans gesture constantly, even while speaking, and our closest primate relatives use intentional gestures in flexible social ways. Studies of ape and human communication suggest that gesture was deeply important in the evolutionary roots of language. So a person who could not hear was not trapped in total silence inside a meaningless world. They were living among bodies that signaled constantly. A hand wave might mean, come here. A sharp look might mean stop. A pointed finger might mean there, behind the rocks. A crouched body might mean danger. A raised palm might mean wait. Around a hunt, this may even have been an advantage because hunters often need silence. You do not want to yell when stalking ibex on a cliffside. You do not want to shout when a herd is nervous. In that world, quiet communication was not a backup system. It was part of survival. And Shanidar Cave itself helps us picture this. Archaeologists working there describe it as a place used by Neanderthals and later modern humans, with evidence of hearths and seasonal hunting activity. The surrounding landscape included agile ibex, animals that could move across steep cliffs with terrifying ease. Hunting them required coordination, patience, and careful reading of movement. Now imagine being deaf in that hunting world. You might not be the person listening for distant hooves, but you could be the person watching the ridge. You could see dust rising before others notice it. You could track body movement. You could notice a shadow crossing the stone. Survival in a group is not about everyone having the same strength. It is about different people covering different gaps. And there is something else we need to understand. Losing one sense does not simply leave an empty space. The brain adapts. Modern research on deaf individuals shows that early auditory deprivation can be associated with enhanced visual attention, especially toward the periphery. That does not mean deafness is magically easy, or that every deaf person gains the same abilities, but it does mean the human brain is not passive. It reorganizes. It learns to pull more information from what remains. For an ancient deaf person, peripheral vision could matter enormously. A flicker at the edge of sight, a companion's sudden movement, a wolf slipping between trees, a child wandering too close to a drop. When sound disappears, the world does not become empty. It becomes more visual, more vibrational, more dependent on patterns. They could feel the ground tremble under heavy movement. They could sense the change in air when others suddenly became alert. They could smell smoke, blood, rain, animals, rot, and fear. Ancient humans live much closer to the sensory texture of the world than most of us do. Today, we outsource awareness to phones, signs, alarms, and electric lights. They lived inside the weather, inside the landscape, inside each other's body language. But none of this fully explains Shanidar 1, because his survival was not just about adapting to deafness. His body carried multiple serious impairments. That means someone likely helped him, maybe not in a sentimental modern way, maybe not with soft words and moral speeches, but in practical acts that leave no direct fossil trace. Someone waited. Someone shared food. Someone allowed him to move at his pace. Someone may have warned him with touch instead of sound. Someone may have made space for him near the fire. And that is where ancient humanity becomes unexpectedly intimate. There is a field called bioarchaeology of care, which studies cases where ancient remains show survival with serious injury or disease, especially when that survival would have been difficult without support. The key idea is simple but powerful. Healed bones and long-term survival can sometimes reveal not just pain, but relationships. A broken bone can tell you about violence. A healed broken bone can tell you about time, but a badly disabled person who lives for years can tell you about a group. For a long time, some people imagined Neanderthals as brutal, dim, almost human, but not quite. The old stereotype was that they were strong but emotionally simple. Then the fossils kept interrupting that story. They buried or protected their dead in some contexts. They made tools. They used fire. They hunted dangerous animals. And in cases like Shanidar 1, they seem to have tolerated, supported, or cared for individuals who could not have lived like peak hunters every day. This does not mean Ice Age life was gentle. It was not. It was dangerous, cold, hungry, and often violent. Compassion did not float above survival. Compassion was woven into survival. That is the part we often miss. In a small ancient group, every person was a memory bank. An older or injured person might know where water collected after dry months. They might know which valley held animals in winter. They might remember which berries made children sick. They might know how to shape a scraper, prepare hides, calm infants, read weather, or tell stories that carried survival knowledge. Even someone who could no longer hunt well could still contribute. So when we ask, why keep someone alive if they couldn't hear, we may be asking the wrong question. Ancient humans did not live like modern corporations, measuring each person by daily productivity. They lived in kin networks, bonds, obligations, emotions, habits, and shared danger. Helping someone today might mean that someone else helps you tomorrow. Protecting a vulnerable member might strengthen trust inside the group. And trust is not a luxury when your life depends on sleeping beside others with your eyes closed. The discovery of another Neanderthal, a child nicknamed Tina from Cova Negra in Spain, pushes this even deeper. A 2024 study analyzed a fossil from the inner ear region and argued that the child had a severe congenital inner ear pathology, probably associated with Down syndrome, with serious hearing loss and disabling balance problems. Yet this child survived to at least 6 years old, which researchers argue would likely have required substantial care from others. Think about that. A child with severe hearing and balance problems in a Neanderthal group survived beyond infancy, not in a village with doctors, not in a city with medicine, but in a small Ice Age band moving through a landscape shared with predators. That kind of survival does not happen because the world is easy. It happens because someone carries the child. Someone watches the child. Someone slows down. Someone shares food. Someone notices when they stumble. Someone protects them when they cannot protect themselves. And suddenly, deafness in ancient humans is not just a medical condition. It becomes a window into the oldest forms of human community. There is also a practical side to this. A deaf person in an ancient group would likely develop predictable routines with others. They might sleep in safer positions closer to the center of the shelter. They might rely on touch signals, visual signals, or repeated gestures. The group might adapt around them without thinking of it as accommodation, a tap on the shoulder before moving, a hand sign for danger, a visible cue before leaving camp. These are simple things, but simple things save lives. And because ancient groups were small, people did not need a universal sign language to communicate. They needed shared signs that worked for them. Families today invent home signs all the time when formal language is not available. In a prehistoric band, a gesture could become meaningful through repetition. That motion means water, that one means fire, that one means snake, that one means stay close. Maybe the most important survival tool was not hearing at all. It was belonging. A lone, deaf ancient human would have faced enormous danger. But a lone, hearing ancient human would also have faced enormous danger. We sometimes talk as if the able-bodied individual was the natural unit of survival. But for humans, the real unit of survival has almost always been the group. A single person is weak. A group can surround a fire, defend a child, bring down prey, share knowledge, and absorb misfortune. This is why human evolution is not just the story of sharper tools and bigger brains. It is the story of interdependence becoming a survival strategy. A spear matters, fire matters, language matters, but so does the decision not to abandon someone the moment they become vulnerable. And maybe that is why Shanidar 1 feels so haunting. His bones do not let us imagine prehistory as a clean world of perfect hunters. They show us a man who was injured, impaired, aging, and still alive. He may have limped through the cold. He may have watched lips and hands more than listened to voices. He may have missed the sounds of the cave, the footsteps, the warnings, the laughter, but he was there. Not as a symbol, not as a lesson, as a person, and around him were others. People who knew his limitations, people who knew how to get his attention, people who may have understood that he needed to see their faces when they communicated, people who, in their own rough Ice Age way, made his survival possible. This should change how we picture ancient humans. They were not superheroes, they were not savages, they were fragile bodies in dangerous landscapes, surviving through attention to one another. Some could hear the wolf, some could see the shadow, some remembered the old path, some carried the child, some kept the fire alive. So how did ancient humans survive if they couldn't hear? They watched, they adapted, they used gesture, touch, vision, memory, smell, vibration, and routine. But most of all, they survived because human beings were never meant to face the world alone. The silence did not kill them automatically, because around that silence, there was a circle of eyes, hands, firelight, and care. And in that circle, we can see something ancient, something older than civilization, older than farming, older than writing. We can see the beginning of us.